Hey guys, welcome to another episode. I wanted to thank you for joining me, no matter where you are in the world. If it's morning, night, afternoon, midsummer day, whatever. I just appreciate you being here. On that note, we are going to jump into things pretty quick. I know last time I talked for like 15 minutes and I felt bad, but I felt like I had to get all that stuff out of there, out in the open, because I had thought of it and I didn't want to forget it. So the only way to do that when you have severe ADHD and multitasking issues, you need to do it when you do it, or else you just forget it. Sometimes I even have a little notepad that I have to write ideas or write what my wife tells me, because I for sure won't remember. But anyways, so this one is going to be, it's a story that's more of a journal or a data entry. That's what it's tagged as. I think those can turn out really, really well. So we're going to go for it. This one comes from a user by the name of JohnDayguyII. If I'm mispronouncing that, I am sorry, dude. Just correct me in the comments, or I don't know. I'm sorry. But this one is called Operation Last Breath. And here we go. We're going to jump right in. Maybe we can talk and do silly stuff after the story. But I have to go to work in 30 minutes. So we are going to jump right into the story. If we don't finish, I will see you back in a few minutes after. You won't know the difference, but I will. It'll be 8 hours from now. But here we go. Operation Last Breath by JohnDayguyII. Oh, shit. All right. Really quick. If I'm reading your story, I will message you before I post the story. If you have a pen name, please let me know so then I can not say your username, or I can do both. I feel silly saying the username sometimes because I'm like, but the person, we don't know who they really are. Don't have to dox yourself, but like if you have a pen name or an alias or something, let me know. All right, here we go. I never knew much about my great-grandfather, besides the fact that he served as a tank commander in the German army during the Second World War. After my grandmother passed away, we began sorting through boxes that had been sitting untouched in the attic for decades. Hidden beneath old photographs and letters was a weathered leather journal from 1945. When the war ended, his personal belongings were recovered by American soldiers and taken as captured effects. Over the decades, they passed through countless hands before eventually becoming part of a museum collection. My grandmother never stopped trying to reclaim what had belonged to her father. She spent years fighting through endless paperwork, bureaucracy, and legal battles, determined to bring his possessions back to the family. In the end, her persistence prevailed. The journal was only one piece of a much larger collection. However, and despite everything she accomplished, the rest has never been found. Over the past few hours, I've been translating the entries as accurately as I can. Rather than let the journal gather dust again, I've decided to post the translations here. I've made only minor changes for readability and had to censor an address where some relatives reside. Otherwise, I left the contents exactly as they were written. I will have to warn you in advance, there are some weird and creepy things here. Happy reading. Journal number 5 of Dietrich Kronig, commander of the Panther Tank Devil's grandmother. Whoa, what a name, dude. 6 April 1945, near the Harz Mountains. Okay, just really quick. I just tried to record in a German voice, and it felt so silly. But I'm going to keep going, like in my normal voice. Another bit we can do for the podcast or whatever, or the Patreon, or not the Patreon. If you guys want to hear me just attempt a silly voice, let me know. Because I don't mind to do it. I don't mind to laugh at myself. I think it's funny as well. All right, here we go. The order came this morning. We are to move south towards the Harz region and establish a defensive position along the mountain roads. The men say little. They just stick to their duties. We have enough ammunition for now, but fuel remains a concern. The Panther drinks like a doleful veteran, and every kilometer feels like a negotiation with the machine. Grandmother survived the retreat from the east, though survived may be too generous a word. Carl spent most of the yesterday repairing the left track assembly. and Hans tries his best to fix the turret hydraulics. We're not in any position to request spare parts. The crew remains together, even after the loss of Eric and Heinz. Carl continues to talk about everything and anything, which is a good sign. A silent Carl Weiss would worry me more. Hans has managed to secure more chocolate after trading cigarettes with an engineer, which he guards as if it were gold. Young Newman has exceeded all my expectations. Though forced to serve as a driver, radio operator, and hole gunner whenever circumstances demand, he has carried each duty without complaint. His devotion to the cause is impossible to ignore, though it serves him well amid the chaos closing in around us. The Hart's forests are ahead of us now. They are untouched compared to the towns we pass through. For a short time, looking at the trees, it is possible to forget war. Only for a short time. We move again tomorrow. 8 April 1945, somewhere south of the Hartz Mountains. I realized today that yesterday was my birthday. 39 years. There was nothing to celebrate. I find myself wondering if I see 40. The crew got into an argument. Hans and Carl were passing the time talking about what they would do once the war was over, assuming they lived long enough to see its end. My father's bookstore will have to start selling material in English and Russian, Carl joked with a weary grin. Might as well clear some shelf space now. A few tired laughs followed. Newman, however, didn't share their amusement. You've already accepted our defeat, he said, shaking his head. That is exactly the kind of thinking that will lose us the war. We still have a chance. Hans chuckled. The fuel vapors are finally getting to you. They laughed again, and Newman couldn't hide his irritation. I couldn't really blame him. He had only been with our crew for a month. Compared to the rest of us, he had seen very little of the war. He still believed victory was possible because he hadn't yet watched hope disappear, one defeat at a time. I have the fatherland in my heart as much as he does. I want my country to survive the war with its pride intact, but there comes a point when patriotism must face reality. Loving your country is one thing, refusing to accept what is plainly in front of you is another. For a moment, I thought they might come to blows. I let it continue longer than I should have. Perhaps I wanted to see if they still had enough spirit left to argue. Afterward, they apologized to each other and returned to their duties. That is how things are now. We are angry, tired, and afraid, but we remain together. We received another transmission through the radio tonight. More ground lost. More families will grieve their sons. The road ahead leads deeper into Hartz. The forest grows thicker with every kilometer. The villages are smaller. The roads are quieter. We continue south tomorrow. 9 April 1945. Still somewhere south of the Hartz Mountains. The road was endless in darkness, stretching ahead like a scar across ruined earth. I was inside the tank, hearing the familiar growl of the engine and the steady movements of the crew at their stations. I wanted to warn my men, tell Eric to halt the vehicle, but my voice would not come. The ground erupted beneath us in a flash of fire and metal, and a world became noise, smoke, and silence. I called their names repeatedly, but the only answer was the ticking of a damaged machine. When the smoke cleared, the grandmother remained standing, but the seats in front of them were covered in blood and viscera. I woke with my hands clenched, still reaching for the men who had been there moments before. 10 April 1945. The whole column halted this morning as we came upon a destroyed Sherman off the side of the road. I assigned orders. Newman, radio headquarters and ask if any Allied forces were spotted in the area. Our path was supposed to be safe. Carl, Hans, man the gun and keep an eye open. I disembarked to investigate. The rest of the soldiers viewed from afar. On a closer investigation, I realized the enemy machine didn't bear the marks of any standard form of penetration. Its hull twisted at an angle no battlefield impact should have made. The armor was crushed inward along one side, the suspension torn apart, the tracks thrown loose and curled beneath it like broken limbs. I had seen tanks burn, gutted by Panzerfaust, and ripped open by our guns. This was different, like it was dropped from somewhere high. I glanced upwards the mountain, trying to make sense of the situation. There were no roads above us, only dangerous slopes. I raised my binoculars and surveyed the forest to our left. Nothing but tall trees, and the sounds of nature a somewhat serene scene. I unholstered my pistol and climbed atop the turret. As I peeked inside the dark hole, a breath of decay and stale air drifted from the open hatch. The driver remained wedged behind his controls, though no man could have folded into such a position by choice. His body had been driven sideways against the steel wall, his arms bent beneath him at impossible angles. Across the fighting compartment lay another crewman, thrown clear from his station. One boot still caught beneath the turret basket, while the rest of him had come to rest several feet away. The gunner and loader had fared no better. They were scattered across the cramped interior as though the tank itself had been seized and shaken with impossible force. Nothing inside was where it belonged. Shell casings, ammunition boxes, radios, and loose equipment littered every surface. I remained motionless, my hand tightening around the hatch rim. As much as I wanted to investigate further, we didn't have time. "Button up," I ordered. "We're moving." The men hurried back to their vehicles. Hatches slammed shut one after another. Engines coughed to life, and the familiar rumble of motors spread through the valley. Before climbing back into my own tank, I looked once more at the ruined Sherman. There had to be an explanation, but every answer I found created another question. "Commander!" Newman was leaning halfway out of his hatch, headphones still pressed against one ear. "I've got headquarters." "What did they say?" "They have no reports of Allied formations operating in this sector." He hesitated. "According to them, the route is still considered secure." I frowned. "No reconnaissance?" "Nothing. They say we're wasting time. Orders are to continue the advance immediately." I climbed back into grandmother. "Very well," I said into the intercom. "Driver, ahead. Slow speed. Everyone, stay alert." The column lurched forward, kicking dust and obscuring the mysterious wreck. I replayed the scene in my mind, searching for something I had overlooked. A shell impact, a collapsed ledge, any detail that would make sense of it. Nothing came. Fatigue plays strange tricks on a man's judgment. After weeks of stress and too many sleepless nights, perhaps I had imagined more mystery than there really was. I resolved to forget the Sherman and concentrate on the road ahead. There was a war to be fought. 10 April 1945. A random village in the middle of the woods. I am writing this entry from the comfort of a proper bed for the first time in weeks. It is inside the loft of a large wooden barn. The straw beneath the floorboards dulls the noise from below, where the rest of my crew has chosen to spend the evening with the villagers. Laughter carries through the timber every so often. Strange how quickly men forget the horrors after they are offered warm food and a roof over their heads. We discovered the village shortly before dusk. The column had been moving since dawn. Fuel was becoming a concern, as always, and the men had gone too long without proper rest. If nothing else, I hoped we might refill our canteens and perhaps barter for fresh supplies. It lay hidden among the trees, barely visible from the road. We decided on a short detour, our vehicles in ugly contrast to the greens and browns. Curiously, none of us could find the settlement on our maps. The locals welcomed us without hesitation. They seemed to be farmers, judging from the fields and livestock surrounding the settlement. Their homes are unlike those in the neighboring towns we have passed. Heavy timbered frames, thick stone foundations, and roofs of weathered wooden shingles. Several buildings look centuries old, yet they are remarkably well maintained. One thing immediately caught my attention. There is no electricity. No telegraph lines enter the village, no poles follow the road. After sunset, lanterns and candles appeared in every window. Perhaps they simply never received the necessary infrastructure. It would not be the first isolated community in Germany. Maybe it's the same reason the settlement doesn't appear on any map. The people themselves are also unusual. Nearly every man stands well over 6 feet tall. Even the women are taller than average, and the children possess similar remarkable traits. Hans joked that they must feed their infants better than the Wehrmacht feeds its soldiers. More curious still is their speech. They speak German, but not quite the German I know. The words are familiar enough that I can usually understand their meaning, yet their pronunciation and grammar sound as though they have stepped out of the old texts I struggled through at school. At times I feel as though I am speaking to characters from a medieval chronicle rather than fellow countrymen. Conversation has therefore been slow and awkward. though they have shown nothing but patience towards us. They have offered food, water, and a place to sleep without asking for payment. After everything we've seen these past weeks, such remarkable generosity is difficult to refuse. Tomorrow, we return to the road. 11 April 1945. Lost. It all started with the crack of a rifle shot that tore me from my hard-earned sleep. A heartbeat later came a cacophony of screams, shouted curses, and gunfire. Footsteps thundered up the ladder. I snatched up my pistol and leveled it at the opening, only to find a mud-caked Carl Weiss emerging, a bloodied shovel clutched tightly in his right hand. "What's going on, Carl? Are we under attack?" I asked as I hurriedly pulled on my uniform. "It's the locals, sir. They tried to kidnap one of the half-truck drivers. Peter Weber, I think, and drag him into the forest. One of our sentries heard the commotion and opened fire. I rushed to the nearby window. Our men were falling back toward the makeshift motor pool, firing at will into the oncoming horde of villagers. Their eyes burned with savage determination. They paid no heed to the bullets ripping through them, surging forward as though pain itself meant nothing. Carl tightened his grip on the shovel, glancing back toward the hatch. "What are your orders, sir?" I checked my ammo and fastened the last buckle on my tunic. "We find the others, and we regroup at the tank," I replied. He gave a sharp nod. "Yes, sir!" Another scream cut through the gunfire, closer this time. Without another word, we stepped into chaos. We descended into the village, weaving from cover to cover as bullets cracked overhead. Smoke drifted between the buildings, carrying the acrid smell of burning wood and flesh. Everywhere I looked, the town had dissolved into scattered pockets of fighting. Soldiers barked desperate orders while villagers charged them with axes, pitchforks, and scythes. A stream of machine gun fire erupted somewhere to our left. We ducked behind an overturned wagon, waiting for the firing to subside before making another dash across the open road. We had scarcely gone 20 meters when one woman emerged from the shadows between two houses. She towered over both of us, broad-shouldered and powerfully built, her clothes soaked with mud and blood. A woodcutter's axe rested in her hands as though it weighed nothing. "Merda!" she screamed, charging. I barely managed to raise my pistol before she swung. The axe bit deep into the wagon behind me, showering my face with splinters. Carl lunged forward, driving the head of his shovel into her side, but she answered with an elbow that sent him sprawling into the mud. I fired twice into her chest. She staggered, yet her grip on the axe never loosened. With another furious cry, she wrenched the blade free and came for me again. I caught the haft with both hands, every muscle straining as she forced me backwards. My boots slipped in the mud. For one dreadful moment, I was certain she would split my skull where I stood. The sharp chatter of a submachine gun shattered the struggle. The woman jerked violently as a stream of bullets tore through her back. Her grip weakened. She stumbled away from me, took 2 uneven steps, and collapsed face first into the mud without another sound. Standing several meters away, MP40 still raised and smoke curling from its barrel, was Hans. "I was beginning to think they had gotten you," he said, already scanning the smoke for the next threat. "Report," I replied. "I found Newman near grandmother. He was wrestling with some kid, even younger than him. He couldn't have been older than 16, strong as an ox and mad as a rabid dog." Hans shook his head. "I helped him put the boy down." "And Newman?" "Alive, shaken, but unhurt." A weight lifted from my shoulders. "He stayed behind to get the tank ready for departure. Said he'd have the engine running by the time we got back." Hans glanced over his shoulder, listening to another burst of gunfire somewhere beyond the smoke. "He told me to find you, then get everyone back to the tank as quickly as possible." I nodded. "Then that's exactly what we'll do." Carl adjusted his grip on the bloodstained shovel while Hans checked the magazine on his MP40. "Move," I ordered. Keeping low, we disappeared once more into the smoke, every step carrying us closer to home. The vehicles came into view through the smoke. It looked like the motor pool had become a gathering point for all our men. And there she stood, mud-covered and scarred from mouths of campaigning. She seemed almost untouched by the chaos surrounding her. Newman leaned halfway out the driver's hatch, waving us forward. "Move! Move! I've got her running!" The familiar growl of the engine cut through the battle like music. We sprinted the remaining distance. Hans climbed aboard first, swinging his MP40 over his shoulder before dropping through the hatch. Carl followed close behind. I was the last to reach the tank. My boot had barely touched the track when the ground trembled beneath us. A deep, rolling vibration. It lasted only a second before fading into silence. Every weapon fell quiet. Even the villagers stopped. Dozens of heads turned toward the forest. For a heartbeat, nothing moved. Then it came again. This tremor was stronger this time. Loose tools danced across the engine deck. Helmets rolled through the mud. The surface of a rain-filled puddle rippled as though struck by an unseen hand. From beyond the tree line came the unmistakable sound of timber cracking. One tree bent, then another. The tops of the pines swayed violently, though no wind stirred the land. Something was forcing its way through the forest. Something immense. No one spoke. All that could be heard was a slow, rhythmic thud. Closer. Another tree splintered with a deafening crack, vanishing into the darkness beneath the canopy. Whatever was coming did not bother to avoid the forest. It was simply walking through it. The villagers stood there, smiling towards the trees. Some whispered unknown prayers, while others chuckled under their breath. One old woman wiped tears from her eyes, laughing as though a beloved relative had finally returned home. The line collapsed. Panic swept through the motor pool. Men abandoned firing positions and clawed their way into any vehicle that still had an engine. Officers shouted themselves hoarse, but their orders dissolved beneath the villagers' laughter and the ever-growing rumble from the forest. "Newman!" I shouted, dropping through the commander's hatch. "Quick! Get us to the road!" The engine roared in reply. Grandmother lurched backward, her tracks biting into the mud. "Sir!" Newman yelled from below. "The road's blocked!" I looked through the vision slit. I hadn't noticed. Half-tracks, trucks, and armored vehicles had jammed themselves together in a desperate attempt to flee. Drivers leaned on their horns while soldiers screamed for the wrecks ahead to move. Near the rear of the column, a Panzer IV Legend finally broke free. Its turret swung to one side as the driver accelerated, throwing mud from the tracks. For a single hopeful moment, it looked as though they might escape. Then the world shook. A deafening crash echoed over the entire village. Legend vanished beneath something that descended from above with impossible force. Steel shrieked. The tank folded in on itself as though it had been fashioned from thin tin instead of armored plate. Its engine died in an instant. Then whatever had crashed it lifted away. I caught only a glimpse through the smoke. A leg, if it could even be called that. It was thicker than the oldest oak in the forest, its surface hidden beneath layers of moth, tangled roots, hanging vines, and dark weathered bark. Clumps of earth spilled from it with every movement, as though the thing had carried part of the forest upon itself for centuries. The foot rose slowly from the flattened wreck of Legend, where 30 tons of steel had stood moments before. There remained only a twisted mass of metal sinking into the mud. My hands tightened around the edge of the hatch. "Commander!" Hans called from the inside. "Orders?" I stared at the forest. The villagers had stopped laughing. They stood at distance, watching with faces full of devotion. They had not been attacking us to win. They had been buying time. I pushed the thought away. A battlefield did not allow time for fear. "Load armor piercing," I ordered. There was a pause over the intercom. "You heard me," I repeated. "Gunner, prepare to fire." Hans had already loaded the round before my last words left my mouth. The turret began to turn. Slowly, impossibly slowly, the massive shape shifted. The trees groaned as something above us turned towards Grandmother. I felt my stomach tighten. It had heard us. Through the roar of the engines and the screams of men, it had heard the turning of our turret. The enormous leg moved, crushing trees beneath its weight as the creature faced us. I could not see its head. I could not see its eyes. Yet I knew it was looking at us. Inside the tank, nobody spoke. "Target?" Carl finally asked, his voice louder than before, his foot tapping nervously. I swallowed. There was no weak point, no armor seam, no engine compartment. "Aim for that thing, whatever it is." The 75mm cannon settled into position. Fire! The gun boomed, barrel-spitting tongues of flame 10 feet long. The recoil threw me against the turret wall as the shell screamed into the smoke. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the forest shrieked. The sound that erupted from the darkness was neither human nor animal. A deep, broken roar, like a wounded giant calling out from the depths of the earth. I could spot wet soil dripping from the wound. The creature had felt the shot, and it knew where it came from. I stared through the optics. The trees moved, the forest was being pushed aside. Forward, I ordered. We will drive through the village if we have to. Newman did not hesitate. Grandmother's engine roared as the tracks began grinding against the mud. The creature moved. One step. The earth collapsed beneath its weight. A half-track attempting to escape vanished beneath the enormous foot. Metal screaming for only a second before being silenced completely. Soldiers scattered in every direction, but there was no point. The thing was not chasing them. Not yet, anyway. It was coming for us. Faster! I'm giving her everything, sir. The second step came down. The shockwave threw men from their feet and rocked grandmother on her tracks. Vehicles were pushed aside like toys. The creature's shadow swallowed the motor pool, blocking out the moon. Above us, something vast moved through the darkness. A shape, a limb, a hand. I looked upward through the commander's hatch and saw fingers descending toward the tank, each one thicker than the tree trunk, covered in moss, vines, and centuries of decay. The hand closed around grandmother. The engine screamed. The track spun uselessly against the mud. Newman fought the controls with everything he had, but it was as though we had been chained to the earth. Then the ground disappeared. A terrible silence filled the hole. We were rising. Inside the cramped steel hull, we were thrown against the walls as the giant raised us higher. The sounds of the battlefield faded beneath us. I forced myself to look through the commander's hatch. Ancient bark stretched across a face that seemed carved from the forest itself. The moss hung from its features, resembling a beard. Leaves and vines moved with its every breath it took. I could smell the damp earth. The creature was looking at us. Load another round and fire at will, I shouted. Hans and Carl moved immediately. Fear had no place right now, only training. The gun fired, the blast echoed through the hole. The shell struck nothing. The creature shifted its grip, and the shot vanished harmlessly into the darkness behind us. I saw anger on its inhuman face. The hand tightened. Metal groaned. The walls of grandmother creaked under the pressure. The creature pulled its arm back. For one impossible second, we hung in air. Then it threw us. The world became noise. Steel screamed. The crew was weightless. The sky and earth became one spinning blur. And then, darkness. 11 April 1945. Inside a lake. The numerous branches somewhat slowed down our endless plunging as we bounced between trees, landing in the middle of a lake in a violent splash. Every breath stabbed beneath my ribs. My head rang as though artillery still pounded outside. When I reached up to wipe the blood from my face, my fingers carried away red with tiny shards of glass. Carl's right arm is shattered. Various other minor bruises cover him from head to toe. Newman had several broken fingers, and his spine hurts when trying to move. Hans Fischer is dead. We didn't see or hear it happening. It was already too late when we noticed his lifeless body hurled in the hole gunner's position. Blood from his head pouring inside an empty ammo box. Eyes were wide open and staring forward. The fastest loader in the entire division. A man who could prepare another round before most crews had even opened their breech. He hated this war from the very beginning and never tried to hide it. He had only one reason for continuing this fight: the wife and daughter waiting for him at home. And now, he was gone. He didn't die a glorious death, no. He was simply thrown aside like he meant nothing. How am I supposed to tell his family? How do I explain that their husband and father did everything asked of him, only for his life to end in an instant fighting a fairy tale monster in the middle of nowhere? How do I explain something like this? to anyone. 12 April 1945. In the middle of nowhere. I forced myself to walk around the panther, though every step sent pain lancing through my ribs. The lake had extinguished the fires, but nothing could undo what the fall had done. She had carried us from France to the Oder. She survived everything the war had to offer, yet one throw from that impossible creature was all it took for the grandmother to never move again. The lake is small, around 10 meters wide in all directions and 1.5 meters deep, enough for us to drag ourselves towards the shore. Had to help Carl and Newman exit through the hatch and then hop back in. I managed to scavenge a few items: a medical kit, maps, binoculars, field rations worth 1 week, couple sticks of dynamite. Counted around 500 rounds of MG ammo, but the gun itself was busted. We are currently sitting under one of the bigger trees that surround the lake. The forest is silent. Nothing but the morning air swaying the vegetation back and forth. At least I hope it's the air. Every now and then we can spot enemy plane formations passing over us, flying deeper into the country. Who was going to stop them? We bandaged what can be bandaged and cleaned what could be cleaned. Newman is laying on a bed of needles and dry leaves. If we find a way out, someone will have to carry him. 13 April 1945. Somewhere beneath the Hartz Forest. We buried Hans this morning. There was no proper ceremony, no priest, no flag, only 3 exhausted soldiers standing beside a shallow grave beneath the trees. Carl insisted on doing the digging despite his injured arm. I ordered him to stop twice. He ignored me twice. In the end, I allowed it. I believe he needed the task more than I did. They had spent nearly every waking hour together. In combat, they hardly needed words anymore. Each knew what the other would do before it was done. Newman sat against a tree and watched, his face taking painful expressions. None of us said much. Before covering him up, I took his identification tags. If by some miracle we find our way back to civilization, his family deserves to know what happened to him. I do not know if that miracle exists anymore. We cannot remain at the lake. Newman's condition is worse than he admits. His fingers are swollen and he struggles to move at all without pain. Carl's arm is useless, though he insists otherwise. I left both at the lake with supplies and instructions to remain hidden. I wanted to search the surrounding area for a road, a village, anything that might lead us out. Even stumbling upon an enemy patrol would be acceptable at this point. This forest is unlike any I have ever seen. The trees are enormous, and I feel like an ant walking among them. Occasionally I would come upon what initially I thought were craters, though that explanation disappeared as I examined them more closely. They were not artillery leftovers. They resembled the imprint of a foot. A single step crushed the soil nearly a meter deep, flattening roots and breaking branches beneath its weight. The edges were filled with rainwater and fallen leaves. I placed my boot beside the edge for comparison. It looked absurd, like a child's shoe left beside a wagon wheel. I followed the tracks for several minutes before stopping. I found the rusty machine shortly after midday. The forest hid most of it. Moss covered the hole. Thick roots had grown around the tracks. Trees had risen around it, their branches weaving through the damaged frame. Then I saw the shape of the armor, the angles, the layout. It was impossible. An A7V? A tank from the previous war. I remember studying these vehicles during tank training. Our first attempt at a fully armored fighting vehicle, and we didn't produce that many either. How the hell did it make it here? My train of thought shattered at the sound of branches splintering. Trees bent and snapped as something immense forced its way through the forest, the ground trembling beneath each step. It was moving again. My gaze darted in every direction like startled prey searching desperately for the predator it couldn't see. Cold sweat trickled down my face. I knew there was no outrunning it. One of its strides covered what would take me hundreds. Then I realized it wasn't coming for me. My eyes followed the swaying canopy and the trail of shaking earth. It was heading back the way I'd come only minutes before. My heart lurched. The brief flicker of relief vanished, replaced by a fear far more familiar. My crew was in danger. I ran. Every breath scraped against my ribs like broken glass, each stride sending another stab of pain through my side. Something to my left, hidden behind the endless wall of trees. The creature thundered through the forest on its own relentless course. Every crash of splintering timber reminded me it was still gaining ground toward my crew. My boot caught on something. I pitched forward, hit the earth's shoulder first, and slid through damp leaves and moss. Cursing, I twisted around, expecting a root. Instead, a weathered iron barrel jutted from the forest floor, half swallowed by roots and centuries of soil. An old cannon, muzzle pointing silently into the trees. No time to think. I shoved myself upright, ignored the fire in my ribs and ran. Knowing I couldn't catch up to it, I unholstered my P-38 and fired several shots in the creature's general direction. The sound spread for miles in the silent forest. The giant paid no attention as it continued moving towards the crash site. I was too tired, too hurt to keep running. I didn't even have the strength to scream, to warn them somehow. My lungs felt ready to explode. I collapsed onto the forest floor as my conscience failed me. A voice deep inside me wished I had died there on the spot, to drift into an endless sleep where every fear, every regret, every problem would simply fade away. I woke beneath the sky without a moon, my body little more than bruises and pain. Standing felt impossible until I found a branch to lean on. It bent beneath my weight but held. So did I. Together we stumbled through the sleeping forest, inching toward the camp. I reached the edge of the tree line overlooking the lake. The wreck of the grandmother was exactly where we had left her, resting in silence, like a corpse. She wasn't going anywhere. Newman and Carl were gone. I don't know if it got them, if they escaped, or if, by some miracle, someone found them. The enemy is still out there. I could feel it, surely, as I feel the ache in my bones. Maybe it's watching me now from between the trees, waiting for me to run again. I hope some of the HE shells are still intact, that the water hasn't ruined them. I'll bring the dynamite we recovered back to the tank and wait. I don't have the strength to go any farther. If I die, I'll die inside my own home. Funny, after everything that's happened, my lighter is still the only thing on me that works. What I wouldn't give for one last cigarette. If you have found this lockbox beneath the tree, then I ask one thing of you. Please see that my belongings are returned to my family and redacted. If it is within your power, search for the rest of my men. They deserve to be found. They deserve to come home. Thank you. To my beloved wife, Helga, and our dear daughter, Ingrid. I want you to know that I am not afraid of what awaits me. A soldier learns to face such things, but the thought that I may never see you both again is the one thing that frightens me. You are my heart, and every moment I have spent with you has been a gift. If these pages are my final words, remember only that I loved you both more than anything in this world. To Carl Weiss, Hans Fischer, Walter Newman, Erich Meyer, and Heinz Schneider, my brothers in arms, I want you to know how proud I am of each and every one of you. You followed me through hardship, through fear, and into places where many men would have turned back. You trusted me with your lives, and I will carry that honor with me until the end. I will never regret being your commander, your friend, your brother, and death shall have no dominion. Damn, bro. Damn, bro. Oh, man. Dude. Like, this story was fucking sick, bro. Holy shit. Like, okay, so most of the stories I record, like, I have fun doing them, but goddamn was this one fun, dude. Like, I don't know if it's just the setting of being like World War II, but like, I felt like I was a little kid, like playing with, you know, your G.I. Joes. And like, I had so much fun with that one, dude. This one was fucking sick. And funny enough, like when they get to the village, the first thing that I think of, Resident Evil 4, and the big thing, thinking like, you know, the troll, even though I know it's a lot bigger, it's more like a treant, or what are those things called in Magic? It's not a treant, it's fuck. Tree folk. Yeah. That's what I was thinking, like a tree beard type of thing, but like way nastier and bigger and like girthier. But the other part of me was thinking it was like Resident Evil 4. Like, what do they say? Fuck. Nah, I'm just gonna fuck it up. I can't remember what they say in Spanish. Granada! Or like shit like that. But yeah, man. So John Daigle, man. Fuck yeah, dude. And the worst part is, this story, like, people must have skipped it over. Because there's not many, I don't think there's like many, yeah, there's only 3. I'm not like 100% familiar on Reddit, but it's like likes or like where you push the up button. I sound like a fucking ignorant hick. But yeah, it's only got 3. Like, this thing was probably one of the most fun stories I've read in a very long time. Like, I wanted it to go more. I wanted to know more. I wanted to see more fucked up things. But man, well done, my friend. Well done. I think I'll read another one. Not by Mr. Daigle here, but by another author I feel like I'm in the mood to read. Like, that got me fucking hyped, man. Holy shit. Man. Like, I'm still thinking about it, like, oh man. And the worst part is, when I first started recording, and it would have been funny, but it would have taken away from it, I think, because you guys would just be laughing at me. But like doing the voice in like a German accent. I never knew how much my great-grandfather, beyond this fact that he served as a tank commander in the German army during the Second World War. Like, I don't think you guys would have enjoyed that for 45 minutes. But yeah, it would have just been hilarious to me. Journal number 5 of Dietrich Kronig, commander of the Panther Tank Devil's grandmother. It's like, I don't think you want that, but yeah. So I am going to stop the recording here for just a brief second while I look for another story. To you guys, it'll be like nothing happened, but I will return. Be right back with editing magic. Boop, 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 boop. Okay. So pretty sure I found the next one, and I'd been looking at this one anyways. But this one is another journal entry, so I thought since the other one was, this one would be fitting to fit in as well. This one is from Mr. Adachi, 2007. He's pretty prominent in the subreddit quite a bit, so I'm sure if you're familiar with the subreddit, you've seen his name, his stories, and his posts pretty often. But this one, it's probably one of the more popular ones of his stories. This one is a Godzilla horror story, which I'm really intrigued on because I love Godzilla. Like, Shin Godzilla was such a fucking cool movie, dude. Like the what are they called? Like his like dorsal plates, I guess you could call them, were humans that were being like amalgamated into the skin and stuff. It was so fucking cool, dude. It was a different like take on Godzilla, but I enjoyed that movie a lot. But this one is called A God in Beast's Skin, a Godzilla horror story. So we're going to jump right in. I want to read this. It's not very long compared to the last one we read. So I would say we'll end a little bit over an hour, which is fine with me. But I really want to get one of those stories that's like 4 hours long, bro. Those ones are the best. Unless they suck, then you're stuck for 4 hours and then you gotta kind of deal with it. Then I've only done them a few times, and honestly, I've got to the end of the story and kind of lied and been like, oh, yeah, that was good. I don't want to hurt people's feelings. But to everyone I have read to this point right now, I have loved all your stories. So, but now you're going to be second guessing. You don't know if I actually like it or not. But I do. I promise. Okay. So this one, A God in Beast Skin, a Godzilla horror story. Sir, we found a body. I trailed toward the frantic yelling of my assistant officer. Jesus Christ, this smell is unbearable. The living quarters reeked heavily of thick rot and sharp iron. The overwhelmingly pungent odor hit me like a physical wall, forcing me to step out of the room immediately to catch my breath. "What are we thinking?" I asked, steadying myself before stepping back to the doorway. "What do you mean, sir?" My assistant officer shot me a genuinely puzzled look. "I mean, what do you think the cause of death could be? Suicide? Starvation? Dehydration? A man could go out a number of ways out here in the middle of nowhere." He took a long moment to process my question, staring blankly. Looking up at me, he opened his mouth to speak but quickly snapped it shut, sinking right back into his thoughts. I think it's suicide, or at least an attempted one." I was just about to press him for a more concrete answer when a specific object lying right next to the corpse caught my eye. Covering my nose tightly to withstand the stench, I leaned in close to get a clear look. I reached my hand out and gripped the cover. "A journal? Officer Farood, go have a thorough look around the rest of the boat. I'm going to take a look at what I can find in here." He gave a quick nod and vacated the room, leaving just me and partially decayed corpse as its only occupants. Grasping the worn edge of the journal with my thumb, I flipped the cover open and began to read the handwritten entries. Day 1. Satoshi was wrong. The Devil's Sea is not where the Umibozu dwell. No, rather, it is a fisherman's absolute wet dream. I've done nothing all day but haul in massive pounds of fish, easily enough to keep the display stock at my shop completely full for an entire month. Better yet, I feel deeply relaxed out here in the wide open waters. There are no people out here to nag at me, and nobody to ask me the exact same questions over and over. It is just pure peace and quiet. The only noise out here is the soft, gentle rustle of the ocean breeze. I truly hope the rest of the days I remain out here are just as peaceful as this one. Day 2. I woke up this morning to see an incredibly odd yet undeniably beautiful sight across the horizon. The ocean had seemingly darkened overnight, changing completely from its usual murky blue to a thick, inky black. The morning sunlight never seemed to sparkle off the surface of the water, which only added to its strange, haunting beauty. The fish don't seem to mind the sudden change of scenery at least, so I have absolutely no complaints. Day 3. I've just pulled up the heavy net, confidently expecting another amazing haul, but I was met with nothing but empty air. That's okay though. A fisherman can't expect a massive haul every single day. Hopefully, tomorrow will bring me a better haul. Day 4. My GPS is completely fried. No matter what I try, the screen won't turn back on. I don't know the way back to the land very well either. Even so, the peaceful scenery still remains intact around me, so I remain determined to push forward. I absolutely need to bring in a large haul on this trip, or else I might end up like Ozaki, a total bum, a broken man who begs for scraps on the streets and lives his life in utter filth. I will not turn back. Day 5. The temperature out here has suddenly spiked up a drastic degree. The blistering heat is so intense that the paint on my boat is actively dripping off the hull, and the metal railing has become completely scalding to touch. I reassure myself through the panic still. I pulled up the net again just now. Nothing. It is the exact same empty result as yesterday, and the day before that. My luck is running on a dangerously thin line now. Day 6. I was suddenly awoken by a deep guttural growl around midnight. The sound was incredibly loud, packing enough force to physically rock the entire boat. What on earth could possibly make a sound like that? No normal animal would be able to pull that off. Not even the largest whale in the ocean. Hurrying up to the top deck, my eyes squinted hard through the heavy darkness. From left to right, my eyes intensely observed the water, and yet I saw absolutely nothing. I ran over to the other side of the deck and saw what seemed to be rows upon rows of sharp, jagged rocks cutting through the surface. No, they weren't rocks. They were easily big enough to be small mountains. They seemed to drift away into the dark before I could get a better look. Day 7. The engine overheated today. I knew it would happen once the heat picked up, but I didn't think it would be this soon. So for now, I'm stuck here. And I swear to God, I still catch glimpses of those mountains out of the corner of my eye. Maybe I'm losing my mind. Day 8. Something was watching me tonight. Its eyes were visible in the shadows of night. It glared at me like a crocodile viewing its prey. Then it quickly sank back into the water. After it went under, the whole ocean just went completely dead. No waves, no wind, nothing. Just this heavy silence that makes the water look like solid black glass. Every little pop and groan from the boat sounds way too loud, and it makes my skin crawl because I can feel how massive that thing is down there under the hole. It's just sitting in the dark, waiting. I'm staring out on the water, completely frozen, scared to even blink because I know this second I look away, those eyes are going to pop right back up. I'm starting to wonder if the money's really worth it. Day 9. The propellers melted. Not bent, melted. I don't know what to do anymore, because everything seems to be completely falling apart now. First it was the GPS, then the engine, and now the propeller is totally ruined. It has to be the fault of that thing. It has to be. Day 10. Voices were coming from above deck at around midnight. I couldn't make out what they were saying or who the hell they were, but I knew for a fact that someone was up there. I went to check on the noise, gripping my pocket knife tightly and ready to lash out at anything that moved. Nothing. There was absolutely nobody even on the ship other than me. Day 11. My mom died 3 years ago, so why is she on the ship with me? I saw her walk right past with the exact same sway she walked when she was alive. She didn't respond or look back when I called out to her. She simply kept walking forward, her form almost shimmering in the heat. Am I losing it? Day 12. They're everywhere. Day 13. My mother appeared again. They all did. All of them. All they did was point in one single direction. There was steam coming from where they pointed. They seemed scared. The sun was setting, casting long, distorted shadows across the deck, and my mom's form was barely visible in the fading light. The rest of the figures were also barely visible, their forms flickering like a dying flame. Day ? It rose from the sea. I saw my tormentor in full view for the first time as the ocean fractured open, peeling back to reveal a colossal shape that defied the darkness. Its skin was that of a charred blackened flesh, split into raw glowing fissures, while its back rose into a massive row of nothing but jagged, prehistoric mountains that dripped with boiling seawater. I was a mere dwarf compared to its impossible scale. I was an insignificant ant staring up into the abyss of its shadow. The thing was no simple umibozu, vanishing into the fog. It was something far grander, a terrifying monument of something long forgotten by mankind. It was no beast. No, it was a god, towering over my dying vessel while the world fell completely silent. The remaining pages contained nothing but unintelligible scribblings. Most of it was just frantic, messy ink marks. But one of the crude drawings stood out to me. It was a jagged, dark sketch, and it looked exactly like the thing he described in the final entry. Staring at the drawing, a cold sweat broke out across the back of my neck. I shut the journal tight. "Officer Frood," I called out, my voice cutting through the heavy silence of the cabin. "Radio in HQ right now. We need to get in contact with Dr. Serizawa immediately." "To be continued? ? I hope so. That was dope. And dude, I hope I presented the kind of the frantic scaredness of the writer in the journal well, because that part was fun. I like doing the whole like, oh my God, like whisper voice. It's fun. And I don't want to say overacting, but I think it's fun to put a lot of effort into those parts. Because I find myself in a lot of the stories, I find myself using like my normal speaking voice for a lot of the characters, which is fine. But when it comes to more, and I don't even know how the character would be described, or was originally you wanted the character portrayed, the person in the journal entry, I kind of portrayed it as a more effeminate character, someone with, more, who would show more raw emotion more than like a typical man would. And I say that as a man. So like, I know a lot of men would kind of put it away, put it in the back of their head. They convince themselves it's not real. But somebody less manly would probably observe and release those feelings probably quicker. So hope I did it justice for you, man. It was a good story. I liked it a lot. And look at that, man. I'm pretty good at gauging stories and how long they take. That was about 15 minutes, and we're just over an hour. I could keep going and I could keep going, but I feel like I'm just going to blow through all my ammunition before I get to the end. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to stay strong. I'm going to continue to read stories on my off time so I can pick out some bangers. Like that first one was fucking awesome. This one was too, just a different awesome. This one was like, you're playing with your Godzilla and the other person's scared, so there's not a lot of interaction, But the first one is like two G.I. Joes fighting each other out, and then some monster comes, and you're like, rawr, 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 and you're hitting them together like, psh, 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 psh. Yeah. But anyways, hope you guys enjoyed it. I am going to edit this now. I might add some sound effects, like some ocean noise for the other one, and maybe some ambient spooky noise into the first one, just throughout the story. That, I would say, probably takes the most time, because you got to put it in there, you got to edit it, you got to cut it, you got to put it in the right spot. And God forbid you get a story with like demons or some sort of creature where you got to like modulate your voice. Man, those ones, in Audacity anyways, like I should probably get some sort of mixer that has like a voice changer on it so I could easily change back and forth if I need to. But in Audacity, you got to like go and you got to do this thing, you got to do this thing, reverse it, put it back forward, do this effect, do this, and then you get the voice you want. So it's kind of annoying. But anyways, thanks so much for joining me, you guys. I'm going to sign off. I love you. I will see you in the next one. It's your boy Orzhov. Adios.
Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.